Hey, welcome to episode 2 of The Hills Have Nerds, your Appalachian nerd-based podcast about nerd stuff and nerd things for nerds who like nerdetry.
Saying nerd enough, or?
You're a nerd.
Dang, do it again. All right, take two.
I like nerds.
All right.
It's a good candy.
Let's get into it. So today our topic is tabletop RPGs. I'm one of your hosts, Josh, and I'm joined by Aaron.
Aaron, that's me.
Yeah.
And joined by
Cody.
And today we have a special guest, Pat.
Hello.
Lee couldn't be with us today. His buddies decided to try to kill him.
he didn't
okay.
have the galls to be with us.
I mean, he's not going to have a gall later.
I know. that was the joke.
Right. He's still got it right now.
For anybody that hasn't picked up on the joke, Lee's having his gallbladder out. And
Anyway.
I apologize for everything that just happened. Okay, so Pat.
I
So
apologize for that intro. I wasn't know we were going to take turns introducing each
I
other.
probably should have said that before.
I thought we
Yeah.
were talking about historical galls.
That would have been better.
Probably would have been better topic.
That's a different episode. No, today is tabletop RPGs. And we're going to go over what they are, some things of note about them, some of our favorite tabletop role-playing systems. We're going to do some tips and tricks to get started, things to look out for, some pitfalls new players get into. And if we have a little bit of time, we're going to go into our thoughts on some of the news surrounding the tabletop community right now. But first, we're going to get into our kind of intro segment. We're going to try to start doing for our episodes of what media we're consuming currently. What nerd stuff are we into right now? And we'll start with Pat. Pat, do you want to introduce yourself and tell a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name's Patrick, or Pat, as most of my friends call me, and I'm a manager at a hobby store, and I have been role-playing and doing most games like this since I think around 84 or 85, when my uncle introduced me to it with the first red box of D&D.
So what other nerd stuff are you into, Pat? What do you like?
Oh, I love comic books. I'm heavy into those. Video games. I think right now my biggest passion are some of the older movies, fantasy-based movies, horror-based movies, especially Hammer House ones or some older Italian horror movies.
Okay. There was a Italian horror movie I actually watched the other day. It was a black and white. I cannot remember the name of it for the life of me, but it was nope. It's completely left me. Absolutely left me. I just watched it the other day and it was
Let's not have much of an impression.
yeah, subtitled and everything. And I thought we were going to have some pretty good conversation about that, but I forgot everything about it. Anyway, let's move into the first segment. So we're going to talk about what are we currently playing? Like, Pat, are you playing anything? Is there any kind of media you're consuming? Is there any video games you're playing right now currently?
Not really video games as much. I don't have that much time to devote to a lot of the more hardcore video games lately. But as far as role-playing, yeah, I'm playing a couple of games of Pathfinder First Edition at the moment.
Yeah, well, one with me and Aaron.
Yeah,
Yep.
Yeah, we play. Pat's our benevolent dungeon master for our Thursday role-playing group, and he led us through a Dresden Files type
sort
campaign.
of. Yeah.
Just a kind of urban fantasy.
Yeah, using the old Westing Games D6 system.
Yeah. So we did that, and now we're starting up Pathfinder. We'll get more into that to go on. What about reading? You reading anything? Is there anything?
Well, right now I'm rereading the Sherlock Holmes Cthulhu Case Files. I'm back rereading the Sherlock Holmes Cthulhu Case Files. It's a 3-book series that's really good.
Oh,
Instead of basic Sherlock Holmes, he actually encounters all the weird elder god stuff that goes on in that.
Yeah,
So
we talked about that in one of the sessions the other night, and there's a just to add on to that, there's that Neil Gaiman short story, it's a study in Emerald, and it's a play on the study in Crimson, the Arthur Conan Doyle Sherlock Holmes. It's Arthur Conan Doyle Sherlock Holmes, right?
Yeah, gave us.
Yeah. So it's the Arthur Conan Doyle Sherlock Holmes
I feel like I need to
style.
read that Cthulhu book. 'Cause, I mean, I love Cthulhu stuff, and I've just recently read through Sherlock Holmes, like the whole compendium of it.
They're very good.
Oh yeah.
They really stick to the original Sherlock Holmes stuff, and then just throw a gigantic amount of Cthulhu in with it.
I think it
Sounds
fits too.
amazing.
I think like Sherlock Holmes always had kind of that like mysticism veil
yeah.
to it, even
Yeah,
like
yeah.
the Hound of the Baskervilles, even though everything turns out
Yeah.
not to be. But it always has that kind of. It could be, the mystique of Moriarty and all, and that just fits in
Yeah.
to the Lovecraftian theme. There, I just feel like that can be superimposed on top of Sherlock Holmes. And
Yeah.
be really
They're
good.
very good. They're not horribly thick books either, so you can run through them pretty fast.
Who are they by?
I don't know off the top of my head. I can fast.
Figure that out, and we'll go to Aaron real quick. So what are you currently playing, watching, reading, Aaron? What nerd media are you consuming right now?
Nerd media, sitting right now. Well, let's see. Currently, I have been playing Solasta a lot. I say a lot. A few times I get to play it, that I've been able to play it.
We have played Solasta for at least minutes.
At least like 2 times that I've played it. I've enjoyed it. I mean, we played it for a few hours when we did.
And what is Solasta?
Solasta's
For the people that don't know.
which is perfect for this episode.
Yeah.
It's very similar to a digital version of like D&D. You create your character. There's a storyline you can play. Well, we played the other day. I really enjoyed the Endless Dungeon.
Yeah.
Whatever it was called. I think max level is 12, and you pick your character, backstory, class, stats, basic D&D, and you get all that together, and you're running through the storyline, or like we did the Endless Dungeon, you run through the dungeon. Right. Besides that, I'm always playing Dragon Age. I've been attempting to run through Dragon Age again, so I'm on the Inquisition. And I keep going on and off on Inquisition. Like, I'm playing it for a bit, and then I quit playing it, and I play it again. And I'm like, oh, crap, what was I doing? Well, I got to start all over again. And then I end up starting all over again. But as watching, gosh, I'm watching tons of stuff.
What's like your favorite thing you're watching right now? What's the one that you're excited to finish? Like you're
Oh, gosh. Wow. I'm trying to remember what the last thing I watched.
pass.
I'm going to pass on that for now. Reading, I don't read a lot. I'm going to be honest. I don't read a lot of things. I read stuff every now and then, but it's a very rare occasion. Man, I can't remember the last show that it's hard to keep up because Brittany keeps changing what shows we're watching. She gets me into something. She's like, hey, check this out. And I'm like, oh, this is really cool. And then we watch a few episodes, and then she's like, yeah, but I want to watch these comfort shows that she likes to watch. Yeah. And so that's what we end up watching. Like today we ended up watching Impractical Jokers instead of, the dozens of shows. Like I haven't finished House of Dragon because I've been trying to watch it with her, and she doesn't want to watch anymore because there's not a season 2.
So maybe this episode you don't let Brittany listen to.
Oh, she knows. We've had this discussion. It's already a thing.
Yeah.
It's hard to keep straight what I'm watching and what I'm not because there's so many different things. Yeah. I guess recently I remember I watched the Vinland Saga, which was really good. It's a really good anime. Fantastic. Takes place. It's crazy. It takes place over in Norway, with Vinland, and it takes place with Vikings.
It makes no sense.
I know, crazy. But it does take 6 episodes of backstory before they start getting into the actual story. But it's really good stuff.
Is it one of those animes like One Piece and Dragon Ball Z or Naruto where it's got there's 3 episodes that are amazing, and then you have 10 episodes of filler that could be cut and it would not affect the story
it's actually been really good. There's only 1 season. They're just now starting the 2nd season.
Okay, so it hasn't had time to...
What, there's no multiple episodes of 2 characters staring at each other?
So far, no.
Oh, good.
A Vinland Saga? No, actually.
40 minutes of that. just hardcore. Just
surprising so far, they haven't been to Vinland, but they've talked about it several times.
nice.
Well, Cody, what about you?
I think Pat's got his. Who
Oh,
wrote the
did
book?
you?
Yeah, it's called the Cthulhu Casebooks. Sherlock Holmes and the Shadwell Shadows is the first one by James Lovegrove.
Not Lovecraft.
Right.
Lovegrove.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay.
Well,
Cool. And I try to like collect this stuff because when we post these podcasts, which if anybody's listening, this has already been posted. Congratulations, you found us. When we post these, I want to put stuff in the show notes about what we talk about, so people can
just an
find
idea.
it. If anything sounds interesting to somebody, they can pursue it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well,
so
Cody, what about you?
mine is I just currently finished Lunar Silver Star Story Complete. It's a remake of a Sega CD game on the PS1.
One of my favorite games.
It was one, honestly, fantastic RPG. I don't know if it's my favorite, but as far as going back and playing, it's one of the best from its time, I would say.
What's the basis of the story?
The
I've never
basis
heard of it.
is there is this young boy in a town, and he has a
Every RPG, young boy in a town who becomes the hero.
So it's Earthbound.
same thing, identical.
Okay.
No,
Is he an orphan?
Secret of Mana?
no, he actually has parents.
Oh. Okay.
Chrono
But
Trigger.
he is
Run across.
he's setting out to be the new Dragon Master.
Oh, this
he
is
has to-
Legend of Dragoon. Was that a Dragon Master? I don't know.
No.
I'm just naming things.
Yeah. But he's setting out to be a Dragon Master. He has to go around and meet all the dragons
Dragon
and
Quest.
collect all the things from them.
There
Yeah,
you go.
right. So I just finished it and started up Fire Emblem Engage recently.
That was one you got the collector's edition of.
Yeah, that's the one I picked up from Lee.
Is it worth it for the collector's edition?
Of course it is. I have all the collector's editions of the Fire Emblems.
It turns out they're the same game.
I just keep buying the exact same game over and over. I'm not playing Call of Duty.
Ooh, fair.
Oh, shots fired at the Call of Duty fandom.
Anyway,
They're all the same. They're all the same.
At least they're more different than Madden.
because
They
they are.
literally did that though. Listen. I played Madden. Okay, I'm a Madden guy. Where I got buddies that play Madden. We get together to play Madden. The Madden 2020, or no, it was Madden 18 and Madden 19 were almost indistinguishable, save for they put new banners in the stadiums.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's
Perfect.
I think
And they're obviously the rosters were changed. I mean, that's
Yeah.
literally all it was.
was it Control Alt Delete? I think did the comic, and they were like, the guy was like, "Hey, you ready to go to drinks?" He was like, "Hold on, we gotta update the new Madden game," and he just changed the number for the year, and he was like, "All right, ready to go."
But we still buy these things.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Cody.
Anyway, the only thing I'm currently watching though is The Last of Us,
Mm-hmm.
and I've not seen the most recent episodes.
The one from last night.
Yeah, it came out at 9:00 last night. And I've not watched it yet.
Did you watch the one before that
Yes.
with Sam and?
Yeah, I knew.
Spoilers.
Like, I played the game and I knew what was coming for it, and I was still not ready.
Yeah, I want to talk about it so bad, but we don't
No.
want to do spoilers. And you're gonna watch it, right?
Yeah, eventually.
When you get through with
When
my
Brittany
600-pound
when-
life,
when-
whatever the current season of.
Porters and my 600-pound life, and recently she's been watching Hotel Hell and everything except the things that we've started.
When you get done with the most current season of the blank Housewives of blank, you can watch The Last of Us and some good media.
And I just started reading The Outsider by Stephen King.
That's good.
I
Really
just
good.
started it.
I've never read The Outsider, but
I've-
I've heard good things.
I'm not real far into it, so I can't really speak much on it. I'm only at the main beginning when the child was murdered and they're trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
There's a really good TV series based on that too.
Yeah, I thought about starting it on because it's on HBO with The Last of Us. So.
Oh, is that based on Stephen King book?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
So,
Josh, what are you consuming?
mostly high-fat foods.
Fair enough.
No, I'm watching The Last of Us.
I got barbecue ribs in the fridge.
We got to get this podcast over with quick. Yeah, I've been watching The Last of Us. That's what Elizabeth and I have been watching. I watched it with my kid too. We watched Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania this weekend, and I don't agree with any of the critics. I thought it was an amazing movie.
To be perfectly fair, I typically don't agree with critics. So.
Yeah,
I thought it was a very good movie. That was at least a 9 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, I thought it was amazing.
I loved it.
Some of this, I felt like in some scenes they could have dialed back on the comedy a little bit, and it would have been better for it. But
I felt like that with
Thor: Love and Thunder. Oh yeah, Love and Thunder was egregious.
There was way too much forced comedy in there.
Yeah.
I think Ragnarok's still my favorite one. It had the perfect amount of comedy.
Ragnarok hit well, like it paced well. It didn't feel like it was throwing it at you. But as far as Ant-Man and the Wasp goes, we rented out the theater. We went and Aaron was there. Pat was there. You weren't there.
Yeah, I actually had to, like, my birthday and my aunt's birthday like combined into one day. So I was
the perfect excuse.
You should have brought your aunt.
She's
to Ant-Man.
I don't know that she's ever seen a Marvel movie.
Well,
maybe.
This one was named after her. He's Ant-Man.
It'd be a great place to start.
No, it was great. Kang was awesome. Jonathan Majors always kills in everything he does.
Yeah.
He was great as Kang. MODOK shows up. MODOK's amazing.
I really enjoyed the way that they did MODOK.
We gotta avoid spoilers, but yeah. So in a couple months we'll do some spoilers past, but it was really good. It was really, really good. Trying to finish Primal on HBO Max. We talked about that in the first episode. Have you guys had a chance to watch it yet?
No,
so good.
I have not, sadly.
Yeah, Primal. This is a story of. I mean, I can do this. Isn't really a spoiler. So it's by Gennady Tartakovsky, and I'm going to butcher his name every time I try to say it. It's a cartoon originally aired on Adult Swim. It's basically a story of this caveman and this dinosaur, this T-Rex, Spear and Fang, respectively, which they never refer to each other by name. It's just what they're called. Who kind of form this unlikely bond based on similar trauma that has happened to them. And it's them just making their way through this unforgiving, prehistoric primal world. And it's not just like dinosaurs are threats. There are these civilizations they come upon, and there's all this other stuff that these ancient magics come into it. Like there's all kinds of really cool stuff that comes up. And
is it on Earth?
Yeah,
oh.
Yeah. I mean, I guess an Earth. It's
Gotcha.
on a version of Earth because it's man and like theropod dinosaur coexisting at the same time. So obviously that didn't happen on Earth, but
Turok.
Yeah, it's kinda. But it's really good. So I'm in the second season of that, and it has some there's very, very, very minimal dialogue in the show. There's some episodes where there's zero talk. Like there's no word spoke at all. It's just sound and grunting and stuff happening. The second season up that a little bit, but it's been really, really good. As far as books for this podcast episode in particular, I started reading Game Wizards by, I want to say John Peterson. I'm probably got that wrong, but it's the story of Dungeons and Dragons from its inception to Gygax losing control of TSR in 83, 84. And then I started reading Slaying the Dragon, and I cannot remember the author's name to save my life. I'll bring that up later. And that is the story of TSR from Gygax's ousting to the acquisition by Wizards of the Coast. And so I started reading those, and it's and we'll get more into that as the show kicks off. But it's chaos, man.
Oh, yeah.
It's a lot of people who had a lot of great ideas and zero business acumen at all.
Yep.
How all the best companies start.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, really.
Yeah.
Now, as far as videos, I'm catching up on the last couple of seasons of Blacklist. I don't know if you guys ever watched that.
Yes.
I've watched some of it. I'm not really.
That's one of my favorite shows. He is the perfect.
James Spader's in it.
James Spader's.
That is my Ultron.
Yeah. That he is the type of anti-hero because he's not necessarily a bad guy.
Right.
And that's the perfect type of character that I love.
What's the basis for Blacklist? Like, it's an older show. It's done. Right?
Oh yeah,
it's been done for years.
No, it's still going.
What?
There was a gap.
It's still going.
There was a large gap after season 3 of 2 or 3 years, I think, and then they started season 4, and I didn't know it, so I've been like powering through all of these.
Holy crap! James Spader's still in it.
Oh yeah. He's the main character.
What? Well, I knew he was the main character initially. I didn't know. I thought his star had risen above like television.
No. The whole synopsis is that he is like right at the top of the list of America's Most Wanted, and he just shows up at a federal building and says he wants to see somebody and shows them the ID, and then he walks in the middle of the room, gets down on his knees, hands behind his head, and he knows he's going to be arrested, and he eventually lets the government know, hey, I have the real list of bad guys that you guys have no idea about, and we're going to take them down.
Okay.
Because I'm going to blacklist.
Yeah, because I'm going to get immunity for that.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So it's the villain turned hero to save.
I wouldn't say hero because
the
the blacklist consists of a lot of the guys he doesn't like.
Yeah.
That are after him too. So.
Well, hero in quotation marks. Yeah.
Anti-hero.
Yeah.
And then there's a female character that he's involved with in it that he only wants to talk to. It's kind of like a daughter figure. Mm. And there's a lot of stuff going around. Is he her father? Is he not? That kind of stuff. So pretty interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I liked what I saw on Blacklist. I really did. That was around the time I started watching White Collar around that time too. I don't know if you guys ever watched White Collar, but it was good.
I was watching Blacklist at the same time I was watching what was it? Marvel Shield.
Oh yeah. Shield,
the Marvel Shield.
Yeah. All right, so let's get into the meat and potatoes of our show today.
You brought me.
No, I did not. You did, because you have ribs in your fridge.
I do. I don't have any meat and potato. I have meat, no potatoes.
I have ribs. I have no meat.
No meat.
It's just bones.
Yeah.
It's just bones. You guys were going to suck on some bones after this. Dear God.
So anyway, tabletops.
Yeah, so we're talking about tabletop RPGs. Remember at my show notes here? All right.
Why didn't you share the show notes with the rest of us?
Aaron, what is tabletop RPG? No, hold on, because that's going to stay in this. We're not editing that out. I sent all of these, including Lee, God rest, may he rest in peace, these show notes, 4 days ago?
I don't remember seeing them.
4 days ago. So everyone here knows exactly what we were going to plan to talk about. So don't let Aaron act like I didn't see anything. I did preparation for this one. Not like the last episode where we just sat down and flew by the seat of our asses. You made me curse. First time I've cursed so far. It's one.
You're welcome.
Strike one.
Everybody gets one.
Yep.
No, I'm going to have more than one.
Oh.
So Aaron, what are tabletop RPGs? What does that mean?
Tabletop role-playing games.
What does that mean?
You put a game on a table.
What kind of game?
About whatever you want, really.
I mean, there's really a wide spectrum that covers. Tabletop games in general, and then you put in role-playing games. Usually people think of Dungeons & Dragons, Pathfinder, where you are playing a character that you have created and you're role-playing out that character. And scenarios, usually someone who's a DM or Dungeon Master controls the world and sets out a scenario and lays out for you. Depending on what kind of DM you have different ones. You have railroading DMs, you have freelance. Well, I can get into multiple ones. Yeah. But I mean, you have different kinds of DMs.
We'll get into that.
Yeah, we can get more into it. But that's...
So, tabletop RPGs are essentially a game you get together and play. It's like a storytelling situation where you're getting together. Someone's presenting a story to a group of people who are the players, and you're all building that story together. And there's one person who's kind of facilitating the world, and the NPCs within, right? And then whoever was playing, whoever are playing player characters or PCs, and they are living, existing, maybe doing an adventure in that world that the Dungeon Master has built, whatever, right?
Running a shop.
Yeah. Maybe they just want to sit on a rock for the entire session. Whatever happens.
We have had players who just ran a shop for a session. They literally took the shop owner left, and they were like, "Well, I'm going to run the shop," and they took over the shop, and that's what they did.
It's strange. Just become Tom Nook.
And then they stole tiki torches.
Okay, so how do we play them? What do we play them with?
Well, if it really depends, most of the time a dungeon master or a game master, depending on what you go by,
Or a keeper.
Yeah, there's a lot of titles.
Mm-hmm.
It could just be you and one person, which a lot of times I've done in the past. Getting groups together is kind of hard sometimes.
Oh yeah,
that is the hardest part of Dungeons and Dragons.
If you can talk to people and say, "Hey, let's meet up at X time on X date," and people show up, that's it. You've done it. You've done everything you need to do. The hard part of running a tabletop RPG is over with.
Yeah,
absolutely over.
Yeah. Someone actually said that they're like, if you're ever nervous about being a DM, if you can get people together, you have officially done the hardest parts.
Yeah. That is, oh my God, that is.
So instead of players essentially run the game on their own, you're just kind of there as a guide.
I don't know if run the game is really the answer, I would say.
I mean, it's not that they ruin
crash
the
game.
game.
Sure.
Yeah, they can absolutely derail things in a heartbeat.
Yeah, that's happened many a times before.
Hours of planning and creating complex backstories and machinations that build off of each other, and these overlapping, intertwining storylines that spiderweb through a rich and vibrant world. And the NPCs the player characters, the PCs, chase a porcupine through the woods for the 2-hour session. That genuinely happened one time.
Yeah.
I may have been the person that chased the porcupine. I wasn't the dungeon master in that story.
That can get very frustrating for a lot of game masters, but I have learned over the many years of playing that you really can't prepare for everything, but just have an open mind, use your imagination, and just go with it.
So I know for some people, and we're going to get more into this towards the end of the episode, like tips to get started and things like that. But just to get into a little bit of the background of tabletop. And so I know some people can be intimidated by some of the price points of the introductory stuff for this. I mean, you look at these books, these player guides, and they're $50, $60, $70 for these books that you don't even really know what it means. And there's at least 75% of this room that has dropped that money, or we dropped that money. We paid for every bit of things we have.
I have always paid for my resources.
We have always paid for our resources.
You go ahead and say 100% of the room.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, because you just bought the... Yeah.
Yeah.
What was it you bought?
Steinhardt's Guide to the Eldritch.
Yeah.
It's
which we're
not
really excited
released
to get
yet,
into.
but he just released beta 0.92 of the book.
But there are many online resources, and I'm not talking illegal. There are many actual legal resources that you can look up online. Well, I'm just talking about looking up like the Pathfinder guides, things like that. That there are a lot of wikis and things like that you can look a lot of this stuff up online.
Oh yeah.
Which I have done a lot of.
What's the big Pathfinder one? Aldrich's. Something with an A. These are things I need to have wrote down prior to the show. Yeah. What's I keep wanting to say Alakazam, but that was for EverQuest.
No, the primary one I usually use is for Pathfinder especially is PFS RD 20.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the one I always
And then there's the Archives of Nethys as well.
Archives of Nethys. That's the one with the A.
They usually share a lot of the same information.
Yeah. D20 PFSRD.
Oh yeah, I had it backwards. Yeah.
That's the Pathfinder Society stuff, right?
Yeah.
That's their kind of organized play things. And so when we talk about like Pathfinder Society and organized play, what do we mean by that? Like what?
Well, they're...
Anybody participated in those?
Yes. I ran a few and played in a lot, especially at the big conventions. Those are amazing. But you get together with your starting off characters. There's a minimalistic, what I compared to the actual game, that you have to focus your characters into because they want set rules. They don't want you to go off and get all this random stuff from a lot of these overpowering books sometimes. Okay, so they focus on specific little groups. That way all the characters are very balanced.
Okay.
And it helps the gameplay out.
Yeah.
And you have, as a game master or dungeon master, you have to follow a specific adventure path. You really can't break off into that. Because if you're running a society event, he has to strictly stay with that.
They do tournament play and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Like that.
Yeah,
There's Dungeons and Dragons, like Wizards of the Coast, a tournament play.
Yeah.
Call of Cthulhu does, which I've participated. Now that's where I've participated in. I deal with Cult of Chaosium, Cult of Cthulhu, that stuff.
Yeah, I think Pathfinder has Pathfinder Society, and Dungeons & Dragons has the Adventuring Gear, Adventuring Guild. I think is theirs. The Dungeons & Dragons Adventuring Guild. I'm having trouble with it, but.
You got the Cult of Chaosium, Cult of Cthulhu stuff for Chaosium.
Even one for the old 80s Star Wars game called Sparks.
Yeah.
Which I tried to get into, and they are super strict about letting anybody into that wants to run games. They're having people come from across the country to watch you and teach you how to play.
Oh, I remember you telling me about this stuff.
Yeah, they're really serious about it. But their game, unlike a lot of the other games that are focused on that one session and you're done, Sparks affects everyone. If something happens in that game, it will affect everyone else because you have to tell whoever's in charge what's going on, and they update the universe.
Yeah, okay. I remember
that's actually interesting.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
It
sounds awesome.
It's a really cool concept, but they're very strict with it.
It's almost like,
I mean they're gonna have to be.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. You can't just have random people running around doing the dumbest things.
It's almost like a tabletop MMO in that sense.
Definitely.
Right, like a tabletop. MMO means massively multiplayer online role-playing game. Which I didn't say last time. We just used a bunch of acronyms and say anything. And we're trying to teach. We're trying to teach the children things.
I'm not a good teacher.
Well, we're going to get there. We're working there. And we know we're going to get you. This episode, we're working on getting you turning around in that chair.
Honestly, remember this episode you're teaching me anyway. Because I mean, I'm a baby in any kind of D&D style game. So
ask questions.
Tabletop RPG.
Further the conversation.
You're not learning very well.
Okay, so I don't even know what Tootie Googlies is. You know what Tootie Googlies. So what I was getting at, and we went on a nice little tangent, and we'll get more into that in the second part of the episode, but what I was getting at with the price points for books is some people may want to participate, but not want to drop that money. Are the books integral? What do you need if you're going to play a role playing other than getting your friends together? What would you guys suggest that someone needs?
From my experience, and you can do this very minimalistic. A player's guide usually has all the characters and equipment, things like that in it. That's usually a primary book. And then honestly, if you don't want to research online and you want to have it in hand, like some type of monster or creature manual. Other than that, you're pretty much ready to go right off the bat.
And that's if you're trying to be system specific.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Anybody add anything to that?
In past experience, as long as one person has these things, you're usually good.
Usually the game master.
9 out of 10 times game master.
Yeah. He's always fitting the bill.
I have played like 2 games. One of them was Call of Cthulhu with Josh.
Yeah.
I brought nothing.
Yep.
Yeah, I have an entire shelf of I mean, we can pull whatever you want. I got Invictus, I got Space, I got Future, I got Jazz Age out the wazoo, I got Gaslight, Whatever you need, I got
So,
you.
like, if you just want to show up and play a game,
Yeah.
pretty well what
Yeah.
you need is like a
Pencil,
Pencil and
paper,
paper.
and dice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
so
it.
that's what I was going to get at is it because I've even run, tabletop RPG sessions for people where I have just come up with a system. Okay, here's what we're going to do. These guys want to, for specifics, it was a friend of mine and her friends wanted to play a game one night. I asked them what setting they wanted. And they're like, we want to do like fantasy cyberpunk combined. So they wanted to do almost like a White Wolf RPG mixed with Cyberpunk 2020 in like a grimdark Ravenloft style setting.
Almost sounds like
Shadowrun.
Shadowrun. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
actually
the
kind of want
first-
to play Shadowrun, but man, I don't know
Well,
anybody that actually wants to run Shadowrun.
I'm not familiar with Shadowrun. That's not one of I've never ran Shadowrun. I've played games, but so what I did for them is I just sat down and said, okay, we're going to create a little world. I'm going to use a real simple D6 system. And what we say, we're going to say D6 stuff a lot, or D20s or D4s. And what that means is those are the different types of polyhedral dice. So that's what you need. You need a pencil, bring a pencil. Just be nice, bring a pencil, and bring some dice. And that's all you need to play. You need a set of polyhedral dice.
Yeah. And usually that's D6, D20 is the dice and the sides of the dice.
Yeah. And your regular sided die, if you go out to your local game store and say, hey, I need some dice, I gotta kill some monsters. You're going to get a pack of 7 dice. It's going to have a D4, which is a little pyramid thing. It's going to have a D6, which is your standard. If you've played Monopoly, you've rolled a D6. It's going to have a D8. It's going to have a D12. And it's going to have a D20. And it's going to have 2 D10s, one of which is going to be numbered from 10 to 90, and another of which is going to be numbered 1 to 0.
0, 2.
Yeah.
And that's usually the percentile dice.
Yeah. You'll have a D10 and a percentile dice, which we'll get into all that. That's really all I need. And so what I did is I sat down and I said, okay, this is what these guys want to do. I'm going to draw on a little, and you may need to be a little versed in this stuff, but man, if you have imagination, you can play paper and dice.
Oh, easy.
Like if you can just think of it and say, okay, and then just assign some numbers to it and then go play, and it'll either work or it won't. And then you'll have something to come back to.
You'll have fun either way.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Paper and dice is really like, I found you get out of it what you put into. Like if you have somebody who sits down at the table, and I'm sure we've all dealt with this, and again, we'll dive more into this second, but we've all dealt with the person who's just adamant to not have a good time.
Oh, yeah.
Who's just very adamant to not participate in the story.
Yep.
And so and that's going to happen sometimes if you're running a game, and that's from a game master point of view. You're going to have some people who they're going to have their phones out the entire time, and it's going to, you're going to try to get them engaged and speak to them, and it's just going to be like pulling teeth. And then you're going to have people who are so into it and so it's going to make you want to run 40 million games with them because, oh my God, these were the players I wanted. Right. And they interacted with your world. They bought in. They were just ready to go with this stuff you created.
William Baxter and Mr. Savage there at Cthulhu.
God. Aaron's
Savage Rage.
Private
Savage
investigator
Rage,
Savage Rage, who I am very intent on killing.
Hasn't died yet.
He has not. He has not. I got on here. We're going to talk about.
Race to Witch Mountain.
That's super impressive for a Cthulhu game.
I know, right?
Dude, he won't die. He's like a tick.
He had a race to Witch Mountain with my newly created private investigator character, and he kept racing to places. He's like, I got the information. I'm not going to let him have it and just take off with it. And I was like, well, you know what? I'm just going to follow him.
Well, that was Aaron's whole thing, and I loved it. I absolutely like from a keeper perspective. That's what the dungeon master's called in Call of Cthulhu. And Call of Cthulhu is kind of like playing in your own B horror movie. These and a good way to think about tabletop role playing games is it's a board game without the board. Your words are creating the board. You're saying what you want to do, and then the DM will tell you, well, roll a dice, roll these dice, and if you roll at or above or below a certain number, you either succeed or you pass. Everything kind of has dice points or values set to it.
Except for sometimes that you play miniatures where you have a board.
Yeah, sometimes you can play with miniatures. We're in the
Miniatures
theory
are
of the
different
modern
thing.
miniatures. It's without a strict rules type deal. Even though there are strict rules. Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. Thank you, Gary Gygax. Okay, so we're going to skip over the story Savage Rage. Stay tuned. He's coming up. I have a lot to say about Savage Rage. So I want to talk a little bit about the history of tabletop role-playing games. Have any of you heard the story of the rise and fall of TSR?
Oh, yeah.
Nope.
Okay. Pat, do you want to go? This is like super fresh on my mind.
Go right ahead. It seems like you're pretty excited about it.
I am very excited. So tabletop role-playing games started. There are men in our nerd culture, in the stuff that we follow and the shit that we're into. There are people who are like our folk heroes. Would you guys agree?
Yeah.
Sure.
Like the likes of Stan Lee, Steve Ditko, H.P. Lovecraft,
Miyamoto, if you're looking for games.
Yeah. Akira Toriyama, Satoshi Tajiri, whatever the dude's name that created Mario.
Miyamoto.
Oh, that's who. Okay, that one Cody just said. And we can sit here and go on and on. And there's a ton of them. There's Stanley Kubrick, Stephen King, all these people. And one of them is Gary Gygax. Gary Gygax is the godfather, the creator, the lord and legend of tabletop roleplay. We would not be talking about this stuff if it hadn't been for Gary Gygax. Gary Gygax was an avid war gamer.
Yeah.
So they'd play like Warhammer, that stuff. Or at that time, it wasn't even Warhammer.
No,
it was
that
like
was
recreating like historical battles.
Yeah, it was mostly military battles. And
Yeah,
things.
yeah, like historical military battles and stuff. And so they had their club that would meet, and they would get together. And he had a buddy, Dave Arneson,
Mm-hmm.
and they started Gary came up with this kind of rules system so they started playing. They're they had these big battalions, right? So if anybody's familiar with wargaming, if you ever watch somebody play Warhammer and they whip out the rulers and all this, and they're measuring stuff by inches, and they're rolling, a backpack full of D6s on the table, and there's just a lot going on because everybody's got 14 million dudes on the table, and there's terrain. It's a lot to watch. And so they got kind of this in their heads that they were going to start narrowing that down. It was, I just want to fight with one battalion, or I just want to fight with one guy. I'm just going to take my knight. I just want to be a knight. I don't want to be, 40 dudes on a battlefield or 4,000 guys on a battlefield. I want to be one guy. Okay, well, they had referees at these things. And Pat, anything I'm getting wrong, tell me.
You're on the path so far.
So they had referees at these things that would kind of, they go to rules check, hey, he's trying to shoot me with this battalion from 6 inches away, but it says 5.5, and I'm under this much cover because this rock's kind of half here, and these referees would weigh in on that. Well, what they decided to do was essentially get together, and this was, Arneson kind of took Gary's rule set and created this system where it was him as a referee running a group of players through a dungeon. He kind of created the dungeon idea.
Yeah.
And so that was the birth of Dungeons and Dragons. And they got together, they kept talking, they kept playing this thing, and then at some point they decided, something they thought they were going to make hundreds of dollars with ended up becoming a multi-million-dollar company fairly quickly.
Oh, within a short few years.
Yeah. And then these guys who were really good at, and Gygax had quit his job. He was unemployed at the time. There's this folk hero stuff, because you need to read Game Wizards. I think you'd really love it. So again, there's this folk hero idea surrounding Gygax, right? Where he was this guy that quit his job to pursue this wonderful pastime that was going to bring all this happiness into people's lives. Well, whether he quit or whether he was fired for negligence, for spending too much time creating games, that's kind of up in the air. He was working, I think, is in the financial sector,
Yeah.
something like that, like an accounting for some kind of low level accounting stuff.
That explains all the math and Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh my god! Wait till we talk about AD&D. Dear Lord.
Well, there was quite a bit of math in the original Chainmail game that led to the D&D and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about wargaming, right?
Yeah.
So what was the original game they were?
Chainmail. That was the first one that he and his friend had made, and that was basically the small little skirmish battles, just like a little group of adventurers or monsters fighting each other. That I think that was 1971 that they made that, and then that developed into Dungeons and Dragons originally. I think in 1974.
Yeah, so they so Gygax created this company, and there was another guy with them who passed away. And he was, and I can't remember his name. You know what I'm talking about? Wasn't Atkinson. But anyway, there was a third member of their startup for this company.
Jeff Parham, I think that was his original buddy in Chainmail.
Don Kay.
Don Kay. Oh yeah,
Don Kay. Yeah. So Don Kay. So Tactical Studies Rules is the name of the company.
Yeah, TSR.
We'll refer to it as TSR because I'm not saying Tactical Studies Rules over and over again. So Tactical Studies Rules was the name of the company. And we tell the story of Dungeons & Dragons because, again, Dungeons & Dragons is the OG. Like, this is the one that created everything. This is, like, Monty Cook, who founded Numenera, the Cypher system, did original Call of Cthulhu. Like, he came from TSR. Sandy Peterson came from TSR. All these big dudes in the role-playing genre. The White Wolf Games, Paizo, all this kind of spawned off of pieces of TSR.
I mean, Dungeons and Dragons is the reason we have RPGs and games.
Yeah.
That's what Final Fantasy was entirely based off of.
Yeah, that's what they're all based off of.
There was a little bit of like pushback from the Tolkien estate when Gygax was initially doing their first publications, but I think it kind of fizzled out. But anyway, Don Kay and Gary Gygax founded TSR. Don Kay died. And so Gygax was then forced to kind of take the helm, and Gygax was a horrible business dude.
Well, he was great with games and making games and playing games, but as far as business goes, he wasn't the best.
And so they essentially TSR kind of built up to this. I think they were making $30 million a year was what what it cost to run them was what they needed. It was like $30 million at its height.
Yeah.
Was what it cost to run him. And they were expecting more growth, and so they were hiring more people than they were able to sustain, expecting that growth. And when that growth didn't happen, it started, having ripple effects. Like there were people that were on, they were producing, that the first edition of Dungeons and Dragons, a basic D&D, and then they released AD&D, which is Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. And that was for the people that want rules for everything. If anybody's ever picked up a rule book for a paper and dice game and flipped through and went like, holy crap, they have movement speed and there's advantage and there's all this Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, Gygax wanted a rule system for which hand you were holding your shield in, gave you advantage depending upon how big the shield was and whether you were right or left-handed, and where the attacker's weapon was coming from, and all of those had different bonuses and numbers that were adding in.
The speed of the weapon. Yeah. I mean, there was a lot.
It's crazy. It's almost like it's the advanced version of Dungeons and Dragons.
Well, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, though, like that is where, like AD&D is where 3.5 and the other stuff came. Mm-hmm. Like we weren't built off basic Dungeons and Dragons. We were built off, like what we're playing is built off of AD&D, but Gygax wanted it to go even deeper. So eventually Gygax gets voted out of the board by his own members, and this lady Lorraine Williams takes over, and that leads to Dungeons and Dragons 2nd edition, which is, I mean, if you guys have ever seen any of that art for the 2nd edition D&D books, they're amazing. Had the big like hardbound kind of gold embossed stuff, and they were producing these things, but they had a deal with Random House, and this was the big thing that kind of brought them finally down and led to Wizards of the Coast, who everybody knows Wizards of the Coast. They sell Magic the Gathering and Pokemon. That's Wizards of the Coast. To Wizards of the Coast acquisition was they're owned
by Hasbro now.
Yeah, and Hasbro bought them recently. Yeah. So it's a nesting doll of quote unquote evil corporations. So the TSR had a deal with Random House to publish and sell their books, but the deal was that TSR would make the stuff, and then Random House would just pay them. So normally in publishing, right, like if I'm going to sell Aaron's book, Aaron's going to make it. He's going to give me the book. I'm going to send it to my distributors. I'm going to tell them how many copies in here or whatever. They're going to sell it, and then I'm going to give Aaron money. TSR's deal was, no, we're just going to give you the book, and then you give us money.
Mm-hmm.
And then they send it to the stuff. And if there were a certain amount over whatever percentage didn't sell, TSR was liable for however much. Because essentially what was going on is Random House would just buy whatever they printed. So TSR could literally print money. TSR would just print and print and print, and they were like breaking things up. So they were trying to sell things that they hadn't created yet.
Yeah.
So they'd come out and say, we're going to release a new novel and a new guide for monks and this and this and this year. Well, now they have to print that. And so they started printing more and more things. And then they had to print more so that they could get the money to print those other things. And eventually sales started dropping because they were severing the Dungeons and Dragons world. Like Dungeons and Dragons was one central world. And then they released, what are the different types? They released Forgotten Realms was the initial.
Yeah, Greyhawk was the original.
Yeah.
And then they did Forgotten Realms,
Dragonlance,
Ravenloft,
Dark Sun.
Dark Sun.
Yeah, Dragonlance, Ravenloft, Dark Sun. There's a Planescape.
Planescape, and there's the Spelljammer universe, which
Spelljammer, yeah,
combines all of the other universes, so you can go to all of them.
And so what they were expecting was, hey, we're going to release this stuff, and we're going to get all kinds of new people because we're attracting all kinds of new ideas and people that have new interests to our product. Well, what ended up happening was they just hacked their purchasers in half. It was the people that were buying already, but some people were buying Spelljammer, some people were buying Ravenloft. People weren't buying everything. Yeah. They were just buying individuals. So then Random House comes knocking for all this money that they've paid for all these books that aren't selling. And bada bing, bada boom, they're in trouble. Wizards of the Coast comes in and buys it. So that's kind of a history of that. And then you have all these people that branched off from that to create some games that we're going to talk about here shortly. So that's a history of Dungeons and Dragons, which was the OG. So Aaron, or actually, you know what? Pat's our guest. Pat, yeah. How did you get started with tabletop RPGs?
Well, I was 8 or 9 years old, and my uncle at the time had been giving me comic books since I was probably around 5. Mostly like Richie Rich and, some more kiddie cartoonish comic books. But then he eventually started giving me, which my first book was Green Lantern as far as big superheroes go, and that's always been my favorite. And then he would give me more of the Marvel books and a few of the oddball independent books in the early 80s. And I saw adverts in these books for Dungeons and Dragons. You see 4 or 5 people sitting around a table in this dark room with all these metal miniatures on the table, and above them were like dragons and heroes, barbarians fighting each other and things like that. And eventually I asked him what that was about, and he showed me his first red box Dungeons and Dragons basic set that came out 84, I think. And so it was probably around that time when he first got it, when it was first released, that I was introduced to it. And he showed me how to play, and he let me play a few games with like my cousins that would come for family events and things. And eventually he let me in with his little group of players, and he handed me down that box set and gave me my set of dice, which is the dice I usually use all the time right now. And I got my cousins with these families events to play and everything. And I would go ahead and make the characters ahead of time, and we just lay them down and start playing, So, yeah, that was it. And it's not looked back since.
And Pat has never financially recovered since.
No.
I've
No.
never been able to afford drugs. I always heard they were great.
The thing is, I could probably turn over a lot of that money because I have everything that I've ever bought except for a few things that have either gotten lost, stolen, or damaged.
Mm-hmm.
And some of those are super expensive, but because of my crazy cat-headed brain that I just hold on to them because I'm like, maybe I'll go back and revisit that and run that in a game, that kind of stuff. And it's more nostalgic to me to hold on to it, all the memories for it all.
What about you, Aaron? How'd you get started?
I got started in college, actually. My first game session was Dungeons & Dragons 3rd edition. The 4th edition was already out, but I was told that was taboo and we don't play that. So,
4th edition played like an MMO.
Yeah, I didn't know at the time. It was just some friends were like, hey, we're going to play Dungeons & Dragons. Because I was raised in a very Christian family. Mom didn't like the idea of us going out and worshiping the devil with Dungeons & Dragons. So we didn't do a lot of that. But in college, I had some friends who invited me over, and I played. And we played, I think, 2 or 3 sessions, and I had a lot of fun. I played a human fighter.
Immediately started murdering people.
Yeah.
So we played, and then we just went, wow.
After we went up to the convenience store and started robbing everybody.
Remember Elizabeth Smart?
Yeah, after that, once I started that page 3 with Pat, then we started doing a Pathfinder campaign. That was like 2015, I think.
Maybe. It seems like it was longer ago than that.
Longer than that, maybe.
Maybe somewhere around there.
I started working there in 2015.
Yeah. Well,
so
I didn't know if you played while you were working there before, or came in as a friend.
no,
It was. You had to start working there before that, 2013 or so.
it may be. I can't even keep up anymore. But
Yeah.
I've been playing with Pat. We've been playing multiple games ever since then. We've had multiple people join, a lot of people leave, and I think I'm the only original person left anymore.
Yeah, out of that bunch.
Yeah, you guys brought me in last year.
Yeah.
And I very much enjoyed playing.
I don't even work at the store anymore, and I still come down and play.
Yeah. Cody, how did you get started? Huh? As if none of us know. Answer that question for the people at home or in their cars or naked in the
Or they're in their shower, it's fine.
Yeah.
Or they're pooping, I don't know. But I have only played like 2 games. Once was with Caleb at page 3 whenever we started. He just ran like a small Call of Cthulhu campaign. And, campaign, it was a game, I guess. It was just like a one-off.
Campaigns, for those of you at home, take place over multiple sessions. A one-shot is designed to be played in one single sit-down session, usually 2 to 4 hours. However, your players will make that not happen, and you'll be there for F and F.
I like that you come in like a PSA. It's like it pauses the video, and you're like, for those who don't know.
I'm
It just
popping up
reminds
videos
me-
with the bubbles.
It reminds me of Freakazoid whenever he's talking to somebody and like the cop just says something off the wall. It's like, not important, but interesting.
Yeah. That's
anyway,
me. Not important, but interesting.
Yeah, anyway, so we done that one, and then I have played one game of Call of Cthulhu over at Josh's, and I think that was supposed to be a one-off that took like 4 hours to play.
Yep.
But I did recently back on Kickstarter that Steinhardt's Guide to the Eldritch. And
What system is that?
it's supposed to be on 5e.
It's 5e, right? Yeah.
And it's
5e is Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, which released some time ago. I don't remember when.
important.
Not too long ago, but 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons.
Yeah, anyway, so it's come out, and it's more of a Bloodborne style game. So
Yeah.
you're dealing with the cosmic horror stuff, but you're playing as characters who can actually kind of kill some of them. Not necessarily the actual eldritch gods that come down, but a lot of the monsters they create.
Well, that's something we can talk about now. Is kind of that differentiation between systems. So we've said Dungeons and Dragons, we've said Pathfinder, we've said Call of Cthulhu, we've said Numenera. What the hell are these? How do they differ from each other? So, Pat, you want to talk about how Dungeons and Dragons can differ from Pathfinder, or what
Sure.
the two systems are, where they came from?
Well, originally you had the basic and the advanced. of Dungeons and Dragons, and that evolved into 3rd edition, which out of all the systems is still one of my favorite systems of Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, that was when I got into it. I had all the hardcover books.
And they updated it to 3.5, and then they decided eventually to, like, we're tired of this. It's time for a new edition. Let's go 4th edition. Change a little thing. And
we did 4th edition to like compete with World of Warcraft. And,
yes, because everything, to me, everybody was a cookie cutter character, just with different names for their abilities.
Yeah.
And a lot of people didn't like that. So the people over at Paizo, they were like, let's keep 3.5, what we like, and update it with our own extra rules. And we can create our own system with it. So they produced Pathfinder. And that hit off really well with some of the negative impact of 4th edition. Now, I've played 4th edition. It's an okay system. It's fun. But there was a lot of setbacks with it from everything that I've experienced. But all of those still use kind of the same system as far as attacks and damage and dice and everything. Monsters are very similar. It strays off into these other games like, for example, one of the other games that I enjoy very much is the older West End game Star Wars system, and it's all D6s. The entire system is just D6s, and it's a lot of fun. Then you have
I always like the simplicity of like the D6 systems like that. That one we played. And what system did you? So the Dresden file set it, which I call it Dresden, but it probably wasn't Dresden, but that was kind of based on. But what was that system we were using?
The West End Games D6 system.
Okay.
Originally,
really liked that.
And we were using the
was the Star Wars.
But they also made modern adventure, fantasy, and space versions of these.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just like generic setting ones, and we were kind of using the modern one for that.
Kind of like GURPS.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to bring up.
Yep, good old generic universal role playing system.
Yeah. So that's another thing. And Cody, if you didn't know,
I did not
tell you, there are role playing systems that are designed to be theme agnostic.
Yeah.
That are just built as you can put whatever you want onto this, layer this. If you want to have your characters, here's like a stick figure, and you can put them like dress up mannequins to build your own systems too. GURPS is one of those. I just saw the Cypher system.
Cypher system is really good, which is what the Numenera system is now based on.
Oh, okay. The GURPS is the only one I'm familiar with.
Yeah, so the Cypher...
The GURPS and the D6 system are the only two that I know.
I don't want to interject, but you have played our superhero system that is just all you use.
I don't want to interject. Yeah. Shut up. You played this.
All you use are 2d10s. Use the percentile.
We do.
You're being a little too... Now, we can be mean to each other on this. We're just trying not... I'm just trying not to drop an F-bomb every other word. And it's
going to punch you in the face.
Yeah.
He deserves it.
What did you want him to say? I know you're stupid, Aaron, but but no, I didn't know.
Shut up.
I didn't know that was a generic system that we use, but I know we have used a percentile, which Dungeons and Dragons uses a percentile.
Yeah. Call it Cthulhu.
Or Call it Cthulhu. I'm sorry,
percentile based. So Pathfinder is essentially like born out of 3.5e, and there's some marketing stuff there where Paizo was publishing for them, and so they said, "Screw you, we're just going to separate with our own because Paizo publishes Pathfinder."
They had their own little world. And some of the original artists for 3.5 was doing art for them, especially Wayne Reynolds, one of my favorite artists for role playing games right now. And when Dungeons & Dragons with the 4th edition, instead of stopping making everything and start making stuff for 4th edition, there's like, we're sticking with 3.5. Let's add on to it, make it even better. And Pathfinder was born.
So talking about systems like Dungeons & Dragons and Pathfinder, which I find are very much empowerment fantasies.
Yeah.
I want to sit down. I'm going to be the big barbarian with the... Speaking of, my current character is a Minotaur barbarian. I love him very much. I'm going to be the big barbarian with the flail, and I'm going to go in and just cleave down these creatures. You look at a game like Call of Cthulhu, which is my favorite game, and that is a disempowerment fantasy, where you are, if anybody's familiar with the works of Lovecraft or August Derleth or Robert Bloch, any of these people, you're in this world of mythos where if you've ever watched a horror movie and you've seen the person, staggering up the stairs away from the creature or hearing a knock at the door and you're like, no, don't go in there. Don't do that. You get to be that dumb bitch trying to make that decision. That's how I sell this to people, and they eat it up. Like, if you ever scream to the TV, don't go in there, you effing idiot, you're now the effing idiot. And you get to decide whether you're going to answer that knock at the door. Because you are playing, you're not playing paladins and clerics and warriors. You're playing journalists and professors and dilettantes and these normal people in abnormal situations. And that's what I love about that stuff.
I like the psychological effect on it.
Mm.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Yeah, there's the, and that ties into role playing. So we'll talk about role playing. So that's a big part of tabletop role playing is the role playing aspect of it.
Actually playing your character.
Yeah, because you are, and you can take that as far as you want. Aaron, do you want to talk on the role play? Like what appeals about role playing to you, or what role playing means?
Mr. Savage there.
Mr. Rage. First name Savage, last name Rage. I'm going to kill that character, dear God.
You can try.
I'm going
and
to.
you probably will, but you can try.
I have so many ideas.
If we ever play again, don't worry, William Baxter will just shoot him in the face.
We're going to talk about that too in a second.
So the role playing, I love the role playing aspect of playing a character out of your element. I mean, like, I can never be Savage Rage. I can never be this cool guy, taller than me, wears his leather jacket, pretends to be a PI that doesn't carry a gun, and has no investigation skills, but still tries.
It's just super, absolutely effective.
And I can never be the gunslinging goblin that we're playing right now in the Pathfinder campaign.
Yeah.
And it's just fun to role play these, and it's always a taboo about metagaming.
What is metagaming?
So metagaming is your character has a knowledge, and clearly, so if something has happened, we've separated, our characters have separated, and your character learned something, Josh, your character learned something, my character didn't hear that. Meta knowledge is pretending like my character knew that when he didn't. So you have to play your character as they are in the game, not the person that you are.
Yeah.
Which again comes to the rage, because that was you going around and getting all the evidence and running away with it. And Mia's like, well, I mean, my character wasn't there for it. So now I'm having to chase down Mr. Rage all over the place, trying to figure out where I'm supposed to go.
I love that Savage Rage has become the example for everything.
He has become the example for a disruptive character in a game.
It was great, though.
Listen, Savage Rage was originally created to be a background character. I'd already played that campaign twice before, and I didn't want to be the main character of that campaign, so I just did things, and Savage Rage was just like a PI who didn't know how to do PI stuff. He didn't know how to do any of this thing.
So the scenario in question that Savage Rage was created for is called The Haunting, and it's just quintessential like starter Call of Cthulhu scenario to run for people who are new to the game. And I have ran it about 7,000 times, and Aaron has played it with me at least 1,000 of those times. And so I was my now wife and another one of our friends. Yeah, we were running Cthulhu, Call of Cthulhu. My wife had never played, and so I was introducing her to Call of Cthulhu. And so Aaron created this character he named Savage Rage, just to be a throw off, kind of funny, with no useful skills, so that my wife could then kind of take the lead in the campaign and do all the fun stuff, all the fun rolls and the investigating stuff.
Yeah, like they sent me to investigate one section where I had to go to a newspaper. I had to go find newspaper articles in the news place, and I went through articles. I found one article, and I was like, "That's all I need," and I left.
I gave him 4 million hints that there were more stuff in there that he needed to look for.
Savage Rage didn't need anything else.
I'm gonna set this up, Aaron, and I want you to tell the story. So in Call of Cthulhu, all of your skills are percentile based. You roll your 2 different D10 dice. You roll your one that's basically 1 to 10, and then your other one that's essentially 10 to 100. And you roll those together. You add the values, and you get a number between 1 and 100. And that's a percentile base. So in Call of Cthulhu, you have skills, and say I have a 50 in lock picking. That means I have a 50% chance to pick a lock I try to pick. I'll roll my D100. If I get at or below 50, I've succeeded. I did that thing. If characters are trying to do like acts of skill or acrobatics or strength, they roll their character values. They have strength, dexterity, constitution, stuff like that. And those things, for character creation. So, Aaron, why don't you just tell? Just the quintessential Savage Rage story.
We got the 3 numbers, and I'm sorry.
So in Call of Cthulhu, there are different levels of success. You have your normal success, which is your higher number. So say I have a 50 in my lock. Let's go back to my lock picking skill. I have a 50 in lock picking. If I roll at or below a 50, that's a normal success. If I roll at a 25 or below, that's a hard success. So maybe I picked maybe there are some locks that require a hard success. It's a harder lock. If I roll at a 5 or lower, that's a fifth of whatever my value is. I get an extreme success, and that pretty much I succeeded no matter what. Like the DM just needs to come up with a reason why I succeeded, because that is 10% chance there to get that done. So
I had to get downstairs. All right.
So you set it up because I want to hear you explain it.
Okay. So I remember.
I know everybody's heard this story a million times, but
your wife had went down the steps in the campaign.
No. There are no steps in that situation.
Were there no steps?
There are no steps.
They
it is a
away.
hole. Yes. It is a hole. It is a chapel that you came across, and a sinkhole opened up.
Yeah.
And it is a 25-foot drop.
Well, I had to get down there somehow.
How did you get down there, Aaron? How did Savage Rage descend?
Clearly, the easiest way for Savage Rage to get down there was to leap down there. And hit an extreme success.
What did you roll, Aaron?
I don't remember the exact number.
I remember exactly what number you rolled.
It was an extreme success.
He rolled a 1.
Oh, okay.
You rolled a 1. You said, I am jumping down.
And a superhero landed.
You did a front flip. You did a somersault off and superhero landed.
I took damage.
A little bit. Not a lot.
Yeah. Well, Savage Rage is good at what he does. What can I say?
So, what are some of your favorite systems you've played? What are some of your favorite role-playing games you've played?
And of course, Pathfinder. It's one of my primary favorites right now. Star Wars. Back in college, I ran Star Wars for almost 4 years straight. Almost all of the original characters made it towards the end of the campaign.
All right.
And that was a great one. I enjoy the old. I always say nice older systems, but I don't know. It's hard to beat the original ones. The superhero TSR Marvel game, which is a lot of fun. I think that one came out in '87. That was a great one. Cypher isn't too bad. I've actually been looking at that with all this recent Wizards of the Coast stuff. A couple of people put me onto that, and that's one of those kind of generic slate open world systems that you can just make whatever you want to out of it. And I've seen anywhere from sci-fi to fantasy to even a Call of Cthulhu campaign based on the Cypher system. But yeah, the Cthulhu, I've got a lot of the Cthulhu stuff too. That's a wonderful system, especially to run. Not so much always as a player character, but running it's a lot of fun. But yeah, right, that kind of narrows it down. I think there's so many systems out there, and I have just about tried everything or a smattering of them, anyways.
And there's a ton that I want to try. I haven't
Yeah.
tried nearly as many as I need to. So we are going to take a break. All right. So Aaron, what are some of your favorite systems?
My favorite systems in the past have been Pathfinder that I've played. I've really enjoyed it. I've loved. I haven't played a lot of 3rd edition D&D, but I played a lot of Pathfinder. I think it's
Played
just
a
one.
lot of 3rd edition D&D.
It's one that I've played the most of.
Yeah.
But I did really enjoy. It's a tough time between because we played the superhero, the Marvel superhero, and it was a blast to play. It was a blast to make the character more than anything, but even just role playing the characters and stuff like that, because all of your powers and background, everything was random, and then you built your character based on all the stuff that you rolled. That was a blast, and I also enjoyed the Star Wars campaign. I loved playing the Star Wars, even though we were really bad at it.
I think that counts as a memorable moment.
So you expound on that.
Oh gosh, I've played two Star Wars campaigns with that.
Which Star Wars was it? D6?
This is D6.
So not Edge of the Edge of the Empire is another Star Wars role playing.
Not Edge of the Empire.
And it has storytelling dice, and that's a brand new mechanic.
Yeah. Nor is it the Wizards of the Coast D20 system.
Edge of the Empire is
system.
Fantasy Flight.
Yeah.
Fantasy Flight.
Fantasy Flight is some really good role playing games. Anyway,
No, the D6 system. Played 2 different campaigns with we've played with 2 groups, 2 different groups of people, but we're really bad at it. We've the first time I believe one of our players threw a thermal detonator outside of the ship.
No.
No. Was it
this
just a tank grenade?
This was like a tank grenade.
Okay.
That you guys were wanting to make the ship look like it was damaged to get through the security of the system.
And his smart idea was, I'm going to toss out the grenade to make it look like, like the ship was, like exploding, because we were talking to him over comms. We're like, we need help. We need to get on the planet. And they were like, oh, we don't know. So he was like, I'm going to toss this out. It'll explode and look like our ship's, really blowing up. And then he rolled his dice. So as you know from this system, every time you roll a 6, you get to roll another dice.
Yeah. On the wild die.
On the wild dice. But he kept rolling 6s like crazy. And he did so much damage, it obliterated our ship. Absolutely obliterated. And the only person that semi-survived was my robot. And that's because I had armor. And as far as we know, I'm probably dead. I know for a fact I'm dead, but we left the campaign with I was floating off in space. But everybody else was dead.
I really feel like we need to pick that. After this Pathfinder we're doing, pick that back up. Aaron's robot has crash landed somewhere, and he finds whoever we're playing with.
The second campaign, we got in a big dogfight. And for some reason, whoever was flying decided the best idea was to land the ship in the middle of this dogfight. So they landed the ship, and guess what happens when your ship stops? It becomes a very easy target. So
They'll never think of this.
So
They'll never expect us to just stop.
I was one of those in the gunning, and I was shooting them still, and they're just going pew, 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 and we explode, and guess what? Everyone dies.
You ran this?
Yeah.
You sadistic piece.
I just give what they give me.
You just let them do that.
They deserve it if they're going to do that.
But
Pat giveth, Pat taketh away.
Pat taketh away. They were fantastic, and I loved the campaigns. But as I said, clearly Star Wars we were not very good at.
That's fantastic. Well, Cody, you said you've ran a couple. So what's a memorable? So we'll get into memorable moments because Cody, you've only ran like a handful of systems. So what's a memorable moment from you playing that you can like from the. We've only ran the one, right? You did the Madman. You didn't do the one I wrote, the So Shall the Trees Grow. You didn't play that.
No.
Okay, so you did the Madman, but you two did. Okay. I keep thinking Cody played.
No.
So from the sessions you've ran from with me and then with Aaron and other situations here.
Probably the most memorable one was our car race to
But it's not script. It's not in the scenario, by the way. The car race. You go ahead. You describe. I'm just going to set this up by saying the scenario does not call for a car chase. Okay, it doesn't.
Well, it did now.
It's
you
a car
certainly made it.
In like 1920 something.
Can we just real quick? Who else was in the scenario with you? Who were the players?
Do you want the players or their character names?
Both.
Well, it was...
The only important one was me as Savage Rage.
That's what I was getting at.
That's unfortunate there, but Pat's son Xander was actually playing with. I can't remember his character's name.
I don't remember any of the other characters.
He played as a bodyguard. He was actually, my partner for this, and Aaron was...
Yeah, Aaron and my wife were partners.
Anyway.
The only thing I remember was playing Savage Rage and screaming, William Baxter, the whole time.
Yeah. There was a rivalry from Rage that William Baxter had no idea about.
That's my favorite part.
William Baxter was like, I don't even know who you are.
The whole story was Aaron was role-playing this character who just had this hatred for Cody's characters. He was a rival private investigator, and William Baxter, Cody's character, had no idea who Savage Rage was. And it was just, you guys did such a good job.
And we were going to the same town, or the same building as a house for the guy that we were trying to find. And I think I was actually on my way there first after stealing information from Savage there. So he decides that they're going to race.
And Elizabeth is driving.
Yeah, she was
talked her into racing.
It was like A-model cars on this gravel road.
We were going a whole 25 miles an hour.
Just wide enough for like a horse and buggy. Yeah. And I have no idea how we didn't die.
But we rolled great.
Yeah, what did Elizabeth roll when she had Savage Rage in the car to pass you? On a narrow road in a divot to avoid crashing the two cars together on her drive auto check, she rolled a 1. She rolled a 1. And in Call of Cthulhu, 1s are the best. Can't get any better than 1. No number lower than that. And you want to roll low. And so what did she do?
They came into like this drift, like screeching halt, like sliding up the driveway.
Like we went on 2 wheels at one time to pass you guys.
She Tokyo drifted the models into their Model A into this gravel truck. Oh my!
He got out and was like, "How's that, Willie? I got here first." And he's like, "Yeah, a whole 3 seconds before I pulled in."
The Cody and Sam just gotta butter up like the monsters. Boy. Oh my god, it's amazing.
That's pretty well what I got because that's like the one session I played.
Pat, do you have any memorable moments from games you've played?
Yeah, the one that I always think of is from one of my earlier groups. Not as a kid, but when I was an adult, or when I am an adult. We were playing AD&D at the time. This was before 3rd edition ever came out. And we had played that campaign a good 2.5, almost 3 years. And the characters, I think the highest level character was maybe 12, and that was the thief, because the thieves the rogues could advance a lot faster than anyone else. But one of the main characters in the group, and these were all original characters for this whole campaign, one of the original characters died abruptly because of a mistake of another character. And those guys, I mean, it went quiet for a good 3 or 4 minutes because they couldn't believe it had happened. And then one of the other characters, the girl that was playing, she just started crying because he had died.
Like in real life,
crying. Yeah.
Like, I feel like it's something we need to specify.
Yeah, like real life crying, because these characters, they had so much fun. Yeah. They did all this stuff together. They were bonding because I think we played probably 3 or 4 times a week, and some of these sessions were 8 hours.
You get attached to these. You get attached to these characters and really like get the backstories.
And like the other character, the ranger, he did everything he could. There wasn't a healer in the group, unfortunately, and how they survived this long without a healer was really amazing. But the ranger in the group, he did everything he could with what little abilities he had to try to bring the character back. And I was giving him every chance in the world, to try to extra chances to try to bring these characters back. Because as a good game master, you generally would rather see the story progress than these characters die and have to start over. But I mean, he went as far as like, hey, give me one more chance. I will renounce my gods and open to everybody, yelling at them, that if I can't bring him back. And he didn't, so he lost all of his ranger abilities and became like a generic fighter almost, but not even as good as a fighter. And the rogue of the group, he broke down, like mentally in real life and as a character broke down. And the girl that was crying, eventually the next couple of days when they went wild with the whole ceremonies to how they bury him.
Whose fault
and
was
everything.
it that killed it?
It was the rogues. Technically.
That makes sense.
Yeah, he.
That's what rogues do. Because I have a rogue. We played the Cipher system, Numenera, for I don't know. I'd say we played 8-9 months at least, at least 2-3 times a month.
Yeah.
And my buddy's glaive, which is analogous to a rogue, was the reason my character, my buddy's Jack, which is now analogous to a rogue, it's the reason my character died, because rogues are notorious for killing people.
Well,
they do it on purpose.
It was one of those situations where they saw some bad guys coming up on horseback, but it was only a couple of them. And he, instead of like being sneaky, because he was with the rest of the group, decides to just yell out and charge into them. Well, unbeknownst to them, there was a whole group of other ones coming around the bend. And they just arrowed from their horseback and shredded through them, and the mage just went down. So, but yeah, then eventually, like that girl character that was bawling originally, she stole the body in the middle of the night. And she was
taking a different turn.
She was going to find some nefarious means to bring him back, because the rest of the group was just going to bury him and have it be done with. So she stole him and went off on her own, and eventually, maybe a couple of months later, the campaign just kind of went further and further downhill because of that one death, until everybody was like, can we play something else? Because they were just so hit by that. They just didn't want to play it anymore.
Well,
that's
awesome.
Yeah, that's really cool. You get attached to these characters.
Yeah.
I remember when we first started playing Pathfinder with Pat, that was every session started out. Now remember, these are just characters on a sheet, and that was how we always started out. And we'd get new people, and they'd always say, now remember, this is just a character that you're playing.
I always like to make a big dramatic show of it and somebody die. I mean, we play Call of Cthulhu's characters die all the time. I just keep like 30 or 40 character sheets just in a folder all the time. And I always like to hand me your character sheet. Your hit points are 0, you die, whatever has happened for them to die. Hand me your character sheet, and then I get to tear it up in front of them.
Pat's done that before.
Yeah. There are some though that we haven't torn up that have died.
Oh yeah.
If it's just a one-shot character they just made and it didn't, but if it's a character that's been in like multiple scenarios across things, I mean, maybe they die here, maybe there's something that happened in between this scenario and the last one, and we can play that and let them come through.
Savage Rage got hit by a car and just kind of died, and we don't know what happened.
I have all kinds of plans for Savage Rage, and you are playing him the next session. Just letting you know.
What if I decide to play something
I'm going to be the real roadiest. I'm going to be a damn conductor. I'm going to be chugga.
Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah.
It's all to get Savage Rage right here so he can be sniped by this one guy, and then we can continue the story.
You got any others, Pat? Or anything else stick out to you?
I mean, there are so many over the years. Some good and bad. I mean, I've went through the whole Dungeons and Dragons is the devil, thing.
I had that on the show notes to talk about the satanic panic with Dungeons and Dragons,
and that whole
what was that movie?
Monsters and Mazes.
It was like
Monsters and Mazes with Tom Hanks.
Yeah.
No, that's not the one I think. There's one that's way cheap, like cheap made.
Dungeons and Dragons?
Monsters and Mazes. Tom
Hanks wasn't in it.
Are you talking about like a Dungeons and Dragons movie, or a movie about the satanic panic of Dungeons and Dragons?
A little bit of both. It was like a college campus, and they were talking about like some sort of cult. Like JonTron done a review on it.
Oh, you're talking about the one where they reversed the roles because they were in the they were Dungeons and Dragons, and they were like, oh no, here come the D&D, the role players, and like they come coolly walking down, like the jock was afraid of them because they were satanic, and it was some big church that did it.
Yeah,
and it was fully supposed to be like talking about how satanic, and they got this girl in to come role play with them, and
Dark Dungeons.
That's it. Yeah.
There was one of the kids, the kid that killed his family, or killed his mom and dad, and then he was on the stand. This is back in the 80s, and this is in the book, came with it. And I can't remember his name, but he gave one of the reasons, why did you do it? He said Dungeons and Dragons. He said, I played Dungeons and Dragons. That was it. And so that kind of spurred on. Then there was this detective that was really trying to like make a name for themselves in the media and stuff. And I can't remember his name either, which dude should be forgotten at the time. Who started saying, this is what's causing this. These children are going in their rooms, they're summoning demons and doing this stuff. Like, no, we're doing math. Yeah. We're doing math with big lizards. That's what we're doing.
I'll never forget that animation. The one I can't think of the name of it or anything. The one where he's like, let's follow a real happening of this event. And he was like, they're eating Cheetos. And he's like, all right, so what are you going to do? Where am I at? You're at the bar.
Oh, yeah.
Are there the old Final Fantasy characters?
Yeah. Are there any girls at the bar?
Yeah. I attack the darkness. Yeah. Quote that all the time.
I know I said I didn't want this at the beginning. Changed my mind, and now I do.
So the kid, that's a tangent. Just quoting random bits from something people who are listening have never seen.
I know.
So the kid, he went to jail for murdering his parents.
Of course.
And he grew up, and he sent. So one of the creative directors for Paizo was on this podcast I was listening to, and they were talking about like crazy letters they've got. He said, "Have you ever gotten any like weird fan mail?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, "That guy." He said, "So when we started," he said, "it wasn't too long after we started." He named him. He sent us a letter, and it was essentially just apologizing for all the damage he did to like the view of Dungeons and Dragons. Like he just didn't know what to do. He was a kid who made a incredibly life-altering and stupid mistake. But he was apologizing for that. And he said that was probably the wildest letter he'd ever gotten. They sent it to the dudes at Pathfinder.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
But I would also kind of argue that like that satanic panic stuff might have worked a little bit in D&D's favor because people were like, 100%. What is going on with this? It's Dungeons and Dragons. Let's get it.
The old saying, there's no such thing as bad publicity, only publicity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of like the YouTube algorithm now. It's like people even comments on how much they hate the video. It's like, that's nice and all, but you're interacting, and that's just making it more palatable.
Well, I mean, a big example of that is the recent the Hogwarts Legacy game. Mm-hmm. Like, everybody's been talking about hating on it and doing this. It's like the #1 video game streaming on Twitch right now because people have websites dedicated to finding people streaming, and they're going there hating on them. Fools on them! They're giving them viewers, the idiots.
That's the I've seen people like buy copies and smash it. And we're not going to get super into this, but like people buying things to destroy it. Just don't buy. Vote with your wallet. Yeah. Don't pay towards it. Now there's all kinds of other stuff with, not the face behind it, but the people who have lives that go into that. Like you're going to boycott a game. Well, there are game designers, and there's people that write for the game. There's hundreds upon hundreds of people that go into this that aren't just that figurehead that are affected by this thing.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a weird gray area. We're not getting it. Yeah. Buy what you want to do what you want to do. That's just don't hurt people or animals.
There you go.
So let's move on. Well, actually, I didn't get to say my memorable moments. I was talking about my memorable.
You don't have memorable moments.
I have all kinds of memorable moments.
None of them that we haven't talked about Savage Rage. It's okay.
My couple don't involve Savage Rage.
I don't believe that for a second.
Well, we play a lot of games together, so a lot of our stuff overlaps. almost all of mine are Call of Cthulhu. I had a girl, and so there's a mechanic in Call of Cthulhu, and it's the sanity mechanic. And so as your character experiences more incredible and awful things, and that thin veil of truth begins to be torn open, and the horrors that lie just under the surface of, your mind begin to creep in, your sanity can drop. And it's very much a role play heavy mechanic. So it's not like health, stuff like that, where, I take 2 damage. That's very empirical. I have 10 health. I start with 10 health. I take 2 damage. I have 8 health. Right? I know how to interact with that. When I get to 0, I'm dead. Right? So that's that. If I want to role play that a little bit, I can say my character's a little woozy or stuff. Sanity works like that in that if you get to 0, you're dead, because your mind just completely breaks. But it's also, as you begin to lose it, it's a very role play heavy mechanic. Like, you have to buy into it. So, if I describe to you that your sanity is beginning to slip, you see something and you lose 1d6 sanity, which means you'll take a d6 dice and roll it 1 time and lose whatever amount comes up on that. It's then up to you to portray how that affects your character. You describe that through it. After you lose so much sanity from a single roll, though, in Call of Cthulhu, you have what are called bouts of madness. So if you lose more than 5 sanity as a result of a single sand loss, you have a bout of madness. And so these guys, we were running Edge of Darkness, which is another wonderful Call of Cthulhu scenario. And 2 of my investigators were inside doing a ritual to stop the quote-unquote big bad of the scenario. One of my investigators was outside kind of protecting the house from these things that were coming as a result of the big bad being dealt with. And he saw something that made him break. Well, the investigators inside simultaneously used all their magic points, because you have magic points in Call of Cthulhu, because magic has consequences. It's not like, I'm a wizard, I'm just going to cast these spells. It's, doing magic can take a physical toll on your body. And so when you hit 0, you pass out. Well, they expended all their magic points to do this ritual, and they passed out. Well, there was also blood all over the ground where they were doing this ritual, and they had to do things to start this up. My investigator outside had a bout of madness. And so he lost some sand from seeing that stuff. And so he said, I'm going inside. I'm going in, because he was hearing things. And when he came in, he saw his friends on the ground motionless, and this just chaos around where they had created this ritual, and successfully pulled it off, but he didn't know because he'd been outside. It's that metagaming versus personal knowledge type deal. Player at the table absolutely knew they had pulled this off and what he was looking at, but the character didn't. He came in, saw them down, and saw his friends dead, and took another hit of sand loss. And this one was just enough to push him into about a temporary madness. And so what was happening is when he tried to flee, he was then exiting the house and coming in through another doorway. And he'd try to run down the stairs into the basement, and he'd find himself coming down from the second store. So every door he was trying to get out of the house from was leading him back in, and he role-played it so well. And I described it to him, and he was talking about how his heart was beginning to beat, and he could feel his pulse race, and he was wiping sweat off his face, and every time he'd stare back, he could hear, the things outside gnashing at him, and he finally stopped in the middle, and he had rolled. You have to roll to determine how many rounds these things last. And I had rolled kind of behind the scenes to see how long this was going to last on him. And he was maybe a couple rounds, which is maybe 3 or 4 more times, or probably less than that. 2 or 3 more times of him just interacting with this bout of madness for me to say, okay, it begins to calm down. And he stopped and he said, he doesn't know what to do. He's going to eat his gun. And I thought at first he meant he's going to eat the gun.
Actually put some salt and pepper
on
it.
And then he, just has his character take his own life. And it was just like, and we were all sitting there, and it was just a really powerful role play moment. Mm-hmm. And it was so good, and TJ got into it so well. I know it can be a touchy subject for some people, but these are stories that people can get into and kind of let their own selves be in, their own worries, their own experiences, and TJ's life's been touched by stuff like that I know. And so it's just really neat to see people get into character and kind of get loose and let loose and build these just amazing situations.
Yeah. I mean, this sometimes is the only chance a lot of people get to express themselves.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So how was it for you, Cody, coming into it initially? You know, I know we can all talk about our first time doing it, but how was your first time? How did it feel when we were trying to like role play and do that stuff?
Well, it kind of started a little slow.
Yeah.
Because like it's not something I'm really used to. Because I was coming from playing like Final Fantasy, where it gives me the character, I see what they're doing, I know where they came from, and all of this.
You're not making you're making its decisions, but you're making its decisions within the constraints of that world, right? It's not I'm gonna go try to do this whatever I want to do.
So like it's a little overwhelming to start with, because it's like I have all this freedom, I don't know what I'm doing with it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like the longer you play, the more you get into the story. Like for me, it felt like it's almost, honestly, it wasn't really any different than sitting down like trying to play like the game within the confines, because like it's almost like you playing as the character, just seeing the story through their eyes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little interesting to be able to sit down and almost basically create your own world within the world you're given.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it. Is you're creating your story within that world, and you get to carve that out as a player. A good DM will let you carve that out. Like there are DMs that will railroad you. And when we say railroad, that means like slap you on rails. This is how my story's going to go. You're going to go from point A to point B to point C to point D. You're done. You're not going off somewhere or doing all this other stuff. And there are times when that's okay. You know, maybe you need to get these guys to this other point. You need to make them stop chasing the porcupine, which I did in Numenera for 2 hours. And our DM let me do that. I was trying to befriend this creature. And we role played it for a solid 2 hours, me trying to catch this thing, and it just constantly biting me. I bet I lost 15 hit points. In Numenera, you take damage based on your dice. So you don't have like HP. You have your statistic pool. And you take damage based on your statistic pool. And I bet I lost like half of my entire pool trying to get this thing to be my friend, and it wouldn't be. But, you know, and then there's different kinds of DMs. So there's DMs that just say yes to everything. Let you do whatever you want to do. Maybe you'll get to the end of the story. Maybe we'll go somewhere completely different and we'll figure it out. And you got to kind of, and I'm sure everybody who's ran a game will agree with me here, you got to be able to roll with the punches and what the characters do. Because the players are always going to do something.
Well, the real answer is there's no right answer how to DM. I mean, there's just different people DM differently. That's all it is. But, I mean, in my experiences, being able to have a DM who can morph around the things that we do has been always a better experience, personally.
I would say, and I want your guys' thoughts on this, my only thing is, as far as like a right or wrong way to DM, I view, don't be the adversarial DM. You are not playing against your players. That is not how this goes. There is not a winner and a loser to this game. You are there to facilitate fun for them and fun for you.
I was going to say, the only way to win is to have fun. That's my opinion.
I never understood the game masters that you see set up, and they have like little stickers of skull and crossbones of all the players they killed, and they're out there to TPK that group the best they can.
Total player kill is what TPK means. It means when a situation or encounter leads to the death of the entire party.
Now, if the party themselves get themselves killed, I mean, that's fine. But actively doing everything you can within the game's constraints to kill those players off, I never understood that.
You have an unfair advantage, too. I mean, I mean, you are Lord and Master of this world.
I mean, I've played with guys that they've just gotten frustrated with the group, or, you know, that he just didn't like the fact that he didn't do enough damage or kill this character off. Walk into the next room, you all fall to your death. That's it.
Well, that's not fun for anyone.
Yeah, what was the old story Shane used to talk about all the time? The guy who they opened the door and it was an orb of annihilation, and he was just like, and you guys are dead, and they were like, what? And they had played this campaign for like a year, and nobody really cared for the DM, but they continued to play it, and he just had them open a door, and it was an orb annihilation.
No, what it was like a dark door you couldn't see through, and the players would go through the darkness, and just behind the darkness was an orb of annihilation. As soon as you touched it, you were dead.
Yeah, he just killed the entire party. He was like, all right, give me 5 player sheets. You did.
That's stupid.
And then
you as a player who not having played this stuff, like, how would you feel if like
if that was my first session,
yeah,
I probably wouldn't want to play again.
Well, this was apparently a documentary Shane was telling us about.
Yeah.
And he said the next scene of the documentary was just him going, and then they never played with me again for some reason. So, I mean,
at the very least, I wouldn't play with that guy again. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not fun to, especially that scenario. Like, there's nothing you can do. It's just you walk through the door and you die.
I think
it's fair if he gives me every chance in the world and I still kill myself.
Yeah,
but
I've actually don't think I've had a player die in our campaigns. I'm trying to think. Yes, in Ricky's campaign once I had one, but I mean it's fun if your player dies. You can still have a fun experience when you're fighting a battle and you're tooth and nail and then you die. Something happens and you die. Or if you're trying to go through an obstacle, something like that. Like you're really putting your character to do something and it doesn't work out and you die is fun.
You want to have agency in your own demise.
Yes.
Right? Like as long as you understand this, because there's a lot of times like high stakes in a situation can be fun. Mm-hmm. You know, we just had that in our group or in our the Dresden Files. And I told you at the end of it, I was tense the entire the fact that all three of us made it out of it blew my mind. But like I was tense the entire time, especially when Xander was just being torn apart by that vampire. Yeah. And I knew like, okay, I gotta get my character. I'm gonna try to prevent this. And if I go down, at least it's gonna be a cool roleplay moment where I got to sacrifice myself to save Xander's character.
Yeah, I ran over to the boss because he was fighting my fellow knight.
Yeah.
Brittany still talks about the campaign that she ran. I don't remember, the Lighthouse.
Oh yeah, that was the first one with a deep one. Yeah. I don't want to spoil it.
Yeah, she still talks about how she was fighting.
Lightless Beacon is what it's called.
Lightless Beacon.
Very cheap on Drive-Thru RPG if anybody wants to pick it up. Go support those people.
She still talks about how her character died. She was fighting with that thing.
She's fighting with three of them.
Yeah, and we were going on, and they fell off. And she still talks about that because she had fun.
Yeah,
and
agency in her.
It was the agency into it. She still loves that. So I mean I think that makes a difference.
I think there's situations, and I apologize, guys, for monopolizing the conversation. I think
we say nothing else.
I like the sound of my own voice. But I think there are situations that can call for, like we said, like a harder game. Like as long as, and that's another key to running these games. Make sure the expectations of the group are clear and that each of your players know what they're getting into. Don't bring somebody to the table who is, completely introverted, doesn't want to have any like real rough situations or, even content warnings. There's some people that run some really like rough games.
Oh, yeah.
As far as the material that are in there. And if that's what people want to and everybody's mature enough to deal with that, then go for it. But don't bring somebody in that doesn't understand that. What's going on. That's a big thing. It's all the social contract of it. So that being said, here's a question for everybody. It's just a real quick question. Pat, do you prefer to be the dungeon master or do you prefer to be a player?
I enjoy playing as a player character, but I absolutely love being the guy running the game master, the dungeon master, the keeper, all that kind of stuff. To me, I also am already playing multiple player characters as NPCs and monsters, and also get to tell a story and see where that story develops with the player characters in the group.
Yeah.
Because I never know where the adventure is going to go.
He says, I have seen Pat jump giddy when somebody's like, well, I can DM the session if you want. He's like throwing the books. He's like, we're done with this campaign. Let's do it.
It's fun to take breaks.
I've never played Call of Cthulhu. I've never been a player for Call of Cthulhu. And I say that all the time, but I've not one time have I been a player at a game of Call of Cthulhu. I have taught it at conventions. I've ran it online dozens of times. I've probably ran close to now 200 and some games, 200 odd games of Call of Cthulhu. I've never played it once.
That's odd. Usually you're introduced into it first and then find out that you like running the games.
Cody, would you ever think you're going to run your own game?
I'd probably attempt it at least once, but I don't have an answer to say exactly if I like one or the other. Never ran one.
Me neither. I've only been a player.
I wouldn't care to attempt the Steinhardts, but yeah.
Okay, so we're almost at the absolute maximum we want to go in time. So we're going to run through a couple things real quick. One, I found some interesting rule sets. So game versions for role playing. Some interesting tabletop RPG rule sets. And the first one is called BESM. Does anybody know what BESM means? Is anybody familiar with this?
BESM.
I'm familiar with the system, but I've never played it. Or
BESM. You know what it stands for? If you know, Pat, don't say.
Okay. Yeah, actually, I'm sorry, I've never played it, but I actually have several books.
You're gonna have to bring the books because I want to see these books.
It's actually influenced some of the games that we've been playing recently.
Big Eagles and Mighty Snakes.
Hey, you're close.
Hey.
You're kind of close. Yeah, it's BESM stands for Big Eyes, Small Mouth. Can anybody guess what the theme it has to do with?
Snails.
No. What if I showed you the?
It's an anime.
Of course.
An anime base.
It's anime because they got the big eyes, little mouths.
5e released their own anime system.
Oh, okay.
So it's a Big Eyes Small Mouth is a tabletop role playing game originally produced by Guardians of Order in '97.
Yep.
Wow.
That was designed to simulate the action of anime and manga. The title alludes to the common anime drawing style of characters with large expressive eyes and comparatively small mouths.
Wow, 97, so you had to speak at the different pattern of your mouth moving, right?
Here's another.
Was out at the time, so.
Oh, that's true.
Here's another. I just saw the name for it, and I didn't look up anything about this system because I didn't want to. And it's called Do, Pilgrims of the Flying Temple.
I don't think I've heard of that one.
Then there's Justifiers. Anybody heard of Justifiers?
No.
Is it just fires?
Nope, it's Justifiers.
Oh,
they are ones who justify. They are the Justifiers. Science fiction space adventure system in which player characters select from 28 humanoid animal types, including bats, albatrosses, Gila monsters, and rhinos, and it's a furry system.
Of course it is.
It actually looks kind of cool. It reminds me a lot of like the Ninja Turtles.
This is Josh announcing his furry.
Oh, I haven't been
What's
there,
your
done that, buddy.
What's your persona, Josh?
Huh?
What's
My
your
persona? I've had several.
Oh.
If she's into it, I'm into it. That's all I'm gonna say.
If
Anyway, we're going to edit all this out, Travis. The game features a skill-based system which character class dictates what skills a character has. It's percentage roll. It's did you ever play the Ninja Turtles RPG? Yeah.
Palladium.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ninja Turtles is essentially furries. You can be animals. There's camels and everything.
There's so much to that Palladium system.
Oh yeah.
But it can also be the most disappointing game you've ever played too.
And then this one here. This one's called Rapture, the Second Coming.
Yes, I actually saw that at Gen Con when I went down there and almost picked that one up out of
Its tagline.
curiosity.
Its tagline: Rapture, the Second Coming, a role-playing game of theological terror.
Wow.
I don't know how to take that.
Yeah, I didn't know if it was gonna be like Jesus is back and he's pissed.
Come back with machine guns.
What? They're really like buying into the undead, or
I'm trying to figure that out. Like how that plays out. It's like everybody's disappearing.
well, the book.
Right.
Yeah, the book has like the 4 horsemen on it.
It's got a lot
Oh,
of,
you're battling the 4 horsemen. That's
Maybe.
there's a lot of fantasy like horror things like demons
So
and
is it just going to be like
Yeah, that's what I
supernatural
figured.
show?
sort of.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so real quick with our last bit of time here, we're gonna go a little bit. 2 hours is the absolute maximum we want to go. We are approaching that rapidly. So I just want to ask everybody, what's their advice for people looking to get into the hobby? Do you have any advice for people looking to get into the hobby? Pat, you can go first.
The best thing you can do is probably go to your local hobby store. That's like the first thing I would imagine. But with social media, you could probably find several local groups that way as well.
Yeah. There's online play.
But there's always, you can ask the store owner or somebody that's there looking at the hobby itself, hey, do you know of any local groups? And usually a store owner, if he's nice enough, will point you into several directions or try to get you connected with somebody. Because generally, as a retailer point of view, that's probably going to be more product you're going to sell.
Mm.
And, but don't be afraid, because there's a lot of stigmata out there compared to, or portraying players as as in role playing in general as people you probably don't want to hang around. It's just not the truth. I mean, that is probably a very minuscule 1% of role players out there that really you probably can't have a good time with.
I think right now, like with Critical Role, there's just a resurgence of role playing.
It's huge.
Since coming out. Yeah. Aaron, you got any advice for people looking to get into any advice for like playing, like when they're playing their first game, do's, don'ts?
My advice for playing the game is try to have fun. Rule of cool always exceeds. And don't ever feel like there's a wrong answer. Do what you want to do. If it's not going to work out, the DM's going to tell you. That's my advice.
Or at least tell you you can try it.
Yeah. They'll tell you. Yeah, if it's Pat, he'll say you can try, and then you can't.
Cody, you got any advice for people as the newbie?
My only one would be don't be afraid to actually play your character, because there was a few times it was like, I mean, I could meta game the way you said. I was like, I can just ignore that, but that's not really the nature of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Don't min-max. That's also don't be one of those
Some
guys.
people like that.
Don't be those guys
do it.
who only min-max and want the best of the best and ridicule everyone else just because
don't
they're
ridicule everyone else, but if you like it, do it.
Don't be a dick about it. Yeah, just to piggyback off what everybody said. I mean, my big piece of advice would be like I said earlier. You get out of this stuff what you put into it, and rules are always secondary. The whole fun aspect of this is that it is what you make of it. Like, there's no board, there's no winner or loser here. It's just, let's sit down, tell a story, and have fun. And if you look at something and say, well, I don't really know, there's a lot of math for these rules, talk to your DM and figure out a way to make it a little simpler. It's not, no one's going to come and take your books away if you don't want to add 17 modifiers to your attack. And you just want to figure out one flat number to try to do something. Or rules are secondary. Having fun is the main goal. All right.
That's the only goal.
That's our show. Don't be a dick.
Okay. Is that the title?
Yes.